choose your stress wisely. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Norman Balewi, and this channel is for creatives who want to make a career from their passions. So you want to create content and you're thinking, okay, podcast or YouTube. You don't know which one. You know that podcast is audio, you know that YouTube is video, but you're in between. You don't know which exactly to choose. So as somebody that has both a YouTube channel and a podcast, I'm just going to help you figure out the one that you want by asking you these 7 questions that you need to answer. So the first question to ask yourself is, what kind of budget do you have? Typically, it costs more to start a YouTube channel than to start a podcast, but I'll help you break it down. So the first thing to consider is software, and the first software to consider is your hosting software. So YouTube is free to start. You already have a YouTube account, and it's just easy to start a YouTube channel, so that's free. But for podcasts, you can start with a free one like Anchor.fm, or you can pay for ones like Buzzsprout. So many of your favorite podcasters that are professionals actually pay for hosting, editing software. So obviously you need to edit your YouTube videos. You can use free ones like CapCut, iMovie, and so on. You can also pay for ones like Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere Pro, and so on. Then for podcasts, you can use free apps like Audacity to edit your podcast. You can use GarageBand, depending on how well you can use it. Different ones. So for podcast editing software, I actually don't know anyone that I need to pay for, because I just knew from the start that I was going to use Audacity, and Audacity is free. So the second thing that you need to consider regarding your budget is equipment. So podcasts, you need a microphone and maybe a phone and a laptop, wherever you're recording on. So generally, podcast equipment is cheaper than YouTube equipment, because YouTube equipment, you need a camera, you need a mic, you need lighting, you need some other accessories like a tripod and so on. But this is not to say that you cannot actually spend more money on a podcast, because there are some podcast microphones that are very expensive. But I'm just sticking to beginners. If you want to have a good sounding podcast, all you need is probably a lavalier mic or a USB mic, depending on where you're recording. If you have a higher budget, you can decide to go with YouTube. If you have a lower budget, you can decide to go on a podcast. So the second question you need to ask yourself is, do you have an audience? When you're watching YouTube, you see a lot of posts from strangers, whether you are going through your homepage or you are looking through your suggested feed. So you just see a lot of new people on YouTube. But podcasts, you can actually find new people on podcasts, but they are not as easy, because your podcast app mostly serves the podcast that you are subscribed to. Then if you check another page, you can see maybe the most subscribed in a particular niche, so on and so forth. If you don't have an audience, podcasting is actually going to be very hard for you, because it's going to be difficult for you to get an audience. You know, YouTube, you can easily find a new YouTuber and subscribe to them. But podcasters, unless somebody recommends you or you see them somewhere else, it's hard for you to find a new podcast that you like on the podcast platform. When I started my podcast, it took me like 2 years to get to 1,000 downloads. But when I started my YouTube channel, it took me 2 weeks to get 1,000 views. So it's harder to build an audience on a podcast unless you have an audience. That's why you see a lot of celebrities with podcasts, and you see that people are listening to them because they already have people that are listening to them, that are watching them. Obviously, there are some podcasts that have big audiences, but they are not celebrities. They probably built that audience over time. So I'm not saying that it's impossible for you to build an audience on a podcast. I'm just saying it's harder, because you can't easily find new podcasters unless you are actively searching for them. However, for YouTube, you can just be scrolling on your YouTube and you just see a video that you like, you see a creator that you like, and you say, okay, I want to be subscribing to them. Through my YouTube channel, I found a lot of new viewers that are commenting, and they would not have found me if I was not on YouTube. So the third question to ask yourself is, what kind of audience do you have? YouTube subscribers are not as dedicated as podcast listeners. I saw the statistics that 90% of podcast listeners actually get through 70% of an episode. But for YouTube videos, many people just check the first 30 seconds to see if they like it. If they don't like it, they click off, because it's easier on YouTube to distract yourself. If you see a video that you don't like, there are thousands of more videos for you to actually watch. For podcasts, because of in your homepage, it's actually ones that you are subscribed to, it's hard for you to leave. And many podcast listeners are listening to podcasts while they do other things, while they are doing their chores, while they are driving, while they are walking, while they are exercising, so on and so forth. Even if they don't like a particular episode, it's actually hard for them to change their mind, because they're already doing something else. They're not with their phones. That's why I see a lot of podcast episodes 2 hours, 3 hours. That's why they spend 20 minutes introducing themselves, just bantering about a particular subject. I know some people might find it annoying, especially if you're holding your phone listening to a podcast, because why are you talking about things that you're not supposed to be talking about? I'm not talking about the thing that you titled your podcast episode as, but because people are actually listening to podcasts doing other things. So if you want a more dedicated audience, people that will actually spend time to listen to you, a podcast will be your best bet. But if you're the kind of person that can grab somebody's attention, chap, YouTube is going to help you because people will want to watch your videos more. This question is, what kind of content do you want to create? Do you want to create educational content, inspirational? Do you want to create interviews? So obviously, long form content actually does better on podcasts because they're not actually with their phone, they're doing other things. People can spend 3 hours listening to podcasts while they work, while they do their chores. But for YouTube, entertainment does a little bit better. This is not to say that obviously they are entertainment podcasts, but if it's two people gisting, you know that it's going to do well on a podcast. You just need to be able to decipher what kind of content suits which platform. Also, if you're the kind of person that wants to be vlogging your daily life, then YouTube is going to be better. I've never actually seen a podcast where as they're going about their day, you're hearing somebody talking into a microphone. I actually thought about it, like, why haven't I seen something like that? But I know that it's not going to be as interesting as actually seeing them doing a vlog. So the next question is, why do you want to create that content? So is it you just want to document yourself? I think video is better for documenting because you actually be able to see what you're doing as well as hear yourself. Then if you want to teach, sometimes if it's more picture based, if it's more video based, YouTube. If you want to be seen as an authority, you go for podcasts. Yes, there are a lot of authoritative figures on YouTube, but sometimes because you see the way they behave on YouTube, you're like, okay, you can relate to them because you're actually seeing them. But if you're just hearing somebody on a podcast and they're advising you, you're more likely to believe them because you feel, I don't know why you feel like they are an expert. Maybe you have to do something with radio because they cannot invite somebody to a radio show and the person is not an expert. Podcast, you believe that the person knows what they're saying because you cannot see them. Do you want to judge documents? Do you want to be seen as an authority? Do you want to be inspirational? Inspirational content does well on both platforms, whether on podcast or on YouTube. What kind of stress do you want? So both YouTube, both podcasts, they are very stressful. So YouTube, you need to set up your camera, your lights, find a good background and record. You need to edit videos, you need to design thumbnails, you need to understand the algorithm and so on and so forth. And that's actually very stressful. It can take 20 hours to make a YouTube video. That's its own kind of stress. Therefore, podcasts, you need to record your podcast, you need to edit it, you need to maybe make an audiogram. An audiogram is a picture with a little bit of audio on top. So it's like a video, but it's only a static picture. So you need to do an audiogram, you need to promote yourself. I feel like with podcasts, you need to promote yourself more because you need to find more people. So when I had only my podcast, I would aggressively promote my podcast. I would share it to everybody that I knew because people will not know your podcast unless they are subscribed and they're actually going to their podcast app to be checking every time. But for YouTube pushes out the video to your subscribers, so I don't need to promote my YouTube videos as much, even though I still promote in case people are not on YouTube. Another thing to consider regarding stress is the platform itself. For YouTube, it's just YouTube you need to worry about. But for podcasts, because podcast is decentralized, you need to learn about RSS feed to spread your podcast to Apple Podcasts, to Spotify, to Google Podcasts, to Stitcher, to all those places. So that's extra stress. But podcasts, you don't need to design thumbnails, you don't need to add text. It's just easy. It's just title, your audio. Actually spend less time on podcasts than YouTube, but both of them are stressful, so you need to choose your stress wisely. Last question to ask yourself is, how is your personality? If you are the kind of person that feels more comfortable without showing your face, then start a podcast. If you don't mind showing your face, start a YouTube channel. I can't tell you that you need to be comfortable in front of the camera, so you need to come and start a YouTube channel by force. If you really want to create content and overthinking that camera thing is going to be stressing you out, then just stick to a podcast. If you build a little bit of confidence of talking to people via your podcast, then you can decide to start a YouTube channel. Get ready for a YouTube channel is stress. You need to dress up and don't look like a mad person. But for podcasts, just sit on your bed. It doesn't matter what you're wearing, it doesn't matter how you look like. Just talk into your microphone, edit, and that's all. So those are the 7 questions I need to ask yourself. Podcast or YouTube channel, which one are you going to start? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, please like it, subscribe for more content creation tips. And in the end, if your brain is tilting towards podcasts, like, okay, I can see that I really want to start a podcast, I have a podcast playlist on my channel, so you check out the videos on podcasting so that you help yourself out. And till next time.